that America will become a land sharing the fruits of the land, not for the favored few, not to satisfy greed, but that all may live in a land in which the Lord has provided an abundance sufficient for the luxury and convenience of the people in general, I think.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the ghost of General Smedley Butler. I'm here with the ghost of Judge James Horton. And we're going to talk about CEOs getting murked in the streets of Manhattan.
Gunned down. I would say broad daylight, but it wasn't.
No, it was at night.
But in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, one of the wealthiest, most photographed places on the planet, a place that I guess any CEO, by virtue of not having a bodyguard detail with him, would have thought he was safe. But instead, outsteps shadowy figure and then does him right there in the street.
I don't even think if he had a bodyguard, it would have saved him. I mean, he just walked up straight behind him, tap, tap. It's over, and he zipped off on a little Zoom bike.
Yeah. It's the most millennial crime ever committed, right? You take one of the e-bikes and flee to the park.
There you go. There you go. He left a backpack full of Monopoly money, and then he later got caught at McDonald's when one of the employees turned him in for a reward they didn't pay him.
How is that Man, McDonald's has a rat problem. Who knew?
Yeah. Getting narked on by what's that evil looking clown's name?
Oh, Ronald McDonald.
Ronald? No, I was thinking of the Hamburglar.
Yeah. Well, isn't it ironic that because like some people look at this Luigi Mangione guy as a modern day Robin Hood almost, getting one over on the CEOs, the corporate oligarchs for us little guys. And isn't it ironic that the person that dimes him out is like a 9-to-5 minimum wager at a McDonald's?
Yeah.
Like one of the people that he's purportedly fighting for.
You got to get them turned on each other, man.
It's the only way. It's how they keep us down.
For peanuts.
Right.
But I read somewhere where he had a previous injury for his lower back. I think it was a surfing injury. And he was about to be aged out of his parents' Obamacare, so he was no longer on his parents' insurance. And this is like a wealthy guy. Like went to Yale. I think he's from Connecticut.
Yeah, wealthy family.
Well-to-do, well-off, solid whites.
Right.
Solid middle-class whites. And if this guy's having that much problems getting health care, like imagine what the average working person who doesn't have that kind of safety net's doing and feeling.
Right. We all know that the American healthcare system's an absolute nightmare. And we'll get into the weeds about why and exactly how bad we're all getting screwed, because we are, right? Not going to bury the lead here.
Yeah, but think about the shareholders there, Judge.
Right. Which is part of the rub. In other countries, regardless of how you feel about socialized medicine, it's about priorities. In other countries where there's a single payer system or there's a, one universal health insurer, their job is to provide quality care as efficiently as possible, right? Their job is to provide a high quality product. Here in America, we insert a middleman where the insurer's job is not to provide you with a high-quality product, but to provide you with as a minimum amount of services as they can possibly get away with for the highest amount of money they can get you to pay.
Right.
It's about maximizing profit margins to share and then maximizing returns to shareholders. It's not about the quality of the service that you're providing. And so it's a matter of having priorities that are fundamentally opposed to each other.
Well, that's definitely a part of it. I like the human element of looking somebody in the eye and saying, you're not going to have that surgery that's going to change your life. That no longer exists anymore because these CEOs have created like a Rube Goldberg type of machine of so many people between their choices to deny coverage and the patients that they don't feel that impact of these people on the phone desperately pleading to honor honor the contract they made for life insurance.
Or for health insurance.
For health insurance, yeah, for health or any type of insurance, really.
Right, automobile, you name it.
Yes, because it's been once one CEO jacks up profits by denial of claim, and Wall Street looks at him and says, "Oh, that's awesome.
Why aren't the rest of you doing that?"
Everyone else has to do it. So now it's like everyone kind of follows Wall Street in the same pattern of bad behavior in order to have just that little higher quarterly profit.
And United Health, as an example, their stock ticker price has exploded over the last few years. And it's just all
because
things,
they were denying 47% of the claims.
a ridiculous amount. And we're going to come back to that later because there's some really interesting things about how the data about how many claims they deny are not really kept the way it's supposed to be.
It could be higher.
Could be higher.
Because they'll sneak some out of, oh, that's out of network, bullshit in there. Like any type of excuse they can use to get out of paying anybody, they'll do.
And that's because their duty is not to you, the insured. Their duty is to the shareholder.
Well, they have a duty supposedly
In the contract.
But they don't act like that, and they'll use any way, way, shape, or form, and the entire judicial system's bent for them to get out of it, and they have an entire, legal team that's there to get them out of it. So that's the price of quote unquote doing business. They'd rather pay lawyers, a tenth of what they'd rather pay out to everybody else. So, and that's not just for healthcare. That's for life insurance. That's for, car insurance, housing insurance. After Katrina, State Farm screwed everybody out of their money because they did this little 1-2 do-si-do where they were like, oh, that looks like water damage. No, that looks like wind damage. And they'd make the person filing the claim fight it. So, and those poor people in Louisiana don't have the means to fight State Farm on all that.
If they did, they probably win, but State Farm's hoping you get tired and go home.
Yeah, well, no, like State Farm would sit there and be like, oh, look, it's 51% wind damage. It's 51, and they'll bring in some sort of wind expert.
Oh, good God.
Yeah. They get an affidavit from a wind expert. He'll go down and take a few pictures and be like, yeah, that's all wind damage.
100% wind damage right there.
Yeah. And so where are you going to find your wind expert? It's each case is going to cost that attorney or that family about $15,000 in expert fees to on a $200,000 home.
Yeah, you said something I want to come back to about how these CEOs, like Brian Thompson, aren't having to look these insured in the eyes and then deny them crucial medical care that could either save their life or improve their quality of life. Are you familiar with that AI that they rolled out recently that's been the subject of some litigation?
The United Healthcare AI?
Yeah.
I've read a little bit about it. I'm not completely up to. You shouldn't have machines
denying claims to people.
Yeah.
And that's what they were doing. They had this because everything's got an AI now, right? Right. You go to a car dealership website, and what happens? You're immediately greeted with a little chat bot. That's really just a built-in AI. Or a rudimentary one. So everybody's using these. But the way United Healthcare was using it was this AI was before it got to anybody automatically denying claims. And sure, you have a right to appeal. But one, how many regular consumers know that? One. Two, know what the appeal process is. And then three, are willing to go through the hassle of doing that. And that's really a calculated risk from them, right? Because they don't think that you're going to go through that trouble.
Well, it's not just the people that need the health care, it's the doctors that are trying to give the health care. They're like, my patient needs this medication. They'll submit it to the health insurance company. Health insurance company will see it's an expensive medication and just be, no. Rubber stamp it, no. And so they get the denial. The doctor then has to appeal that denial, or the patient. Now, the patient doesn't know about all that. But the doctor then appeals it, and it goes to some actual human being working a file, usually a nurse practitioner in a prior life or somebody like that. They'll deny the claim. Now that claim's denied, they appeal it a third time. And this is when they call it a peer-to-peer consult. And it's when usually a physician or a medical specialist has to talk to a quote-unquote peer on the health insurance side, and they'll doctor talk about why this medication or this procedure is medically necessary. And the real rub about that is that a lot of specialists are having to talk to like a pediatrician or an emergency room doctor on whether or not this person needs spinal surgery, or whether or not this person that's having horrific GI symptoms needs, Skyrizi or something like that.
Right.
So, one, these healthcare companies are dictating to these doctors how to practice medicine. Like, they can actually pick and choose what medications they want to succeed or fail based on denial rates that they have. So that's weird in and of itself. Then they don't even bring an actual peer. They bring some hired gun who's not in the same specialty, not even in the same state.
And the point of that is not all doctors are equal in education and experience in field, et cetera, et cetera.
But they don't have the time when 80% of their patients are being denied coverage for something to fight every health insurance company. But here in Alabama, there's really only one, and that's Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So do you want to talk about the 5,000-pound gorilla in the room?
Let's do it.
95% of all insurance coverage in Alabama is through Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama.
95%.
Yes. There's a few other. I think United Healthcare has a little bit of other. Cigna has some.
Who is Viva through? Are they a subsidiary?
Viva's UAB's own self-insured.
Oh, okay.
So that's UAB's personal insurance that they give their doctors and employees and all that.
All right, yeah, because I've got some personal experience with them, which is why I ask.
For all accounts, I've heard Viva's okay. Like they're way better. They're not nearly as monstrous as Blue Cross and all that. But
the point is, you don't have a meaningful choice. So let's say you think Blue Cross sucks ass. Where do you go?
Well,
who's going to sell you insurance here?
Yeah, it's not just that. It's that there's legal barriers to enter in Alabama. You got to get all sorts of.
Are those state barriers or federal barriers?
Both. So there's definitely some federal laws that keep insurance companies from crossing over state lines, but it's not really laws. It's more like.
Because I thought that was one of the things the Affordable Care Act was supposed to fix.
It fixed some of it. But then, like when an insurance company breaks into a new market, there's so many hurdles that they have to go through, like getting approval from all the hospitals, having the medical board sign off on all this stuff. And so it's those barriers are not technically laws, but it's just
not legally restricted. It's not that you can't do it.
Yes, it's a lot of red tape it takes for them to bust into an area, and a lot of the hospitals won't do it. Just because Blue Cross and Blue Shield will make their life a living hell if they do. So Blue Cross is muscling everybody out of Alabama that they can.
Makes good business sense to maintain your monopoly.
Oh, they've been crushing it revenue-wise. I think the revenue was like $7.1 billion.
Jesus.
Like they were just raking it in. But they've also had a delay, deny, and I think Louis
Defend. I think was the other one.
Yeah, is the actual book that was written. I think the Luigi wrote Delay, Deny, Depose.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why you'd want to take a deposition of a dead CEO, but
right, depose the shit out of it.
Yeah, depose him right into that casket. But physicians have. I think I read a stat where 80% of physicians don't follow up to try to challenge the first denial. And that's freaking ridiculous. And the insurance companies know that. So if they rubber stamp that denial, then they're increasing their profits by 80%.
Every person that just doesn't follow through with it is another dollar in their pocket.
Right. And it's completely bad faith on the insurance companies. They know exactly what they're doing. They know that if they put as many, we just got to get more information. Oh, that form, that was a bazillion pages, wasn't quite complete. So we're going to deny that. Like they're just all these little gotchas in there that are put there on purpose to make sure that they have any sort of claim to deny.
The harder they make it, the more steps that they put in between you and getting the care that you need, the more likely you give up pushing them on it. You give up pushing your right under that contract.
I was reading an article in 1819, by the way. It's a very good publication in Alabama. And it was by a spine surgeon. And he was talking about how he had to talk to a pediatrician about why a lady's spine surgery was medically necessary.
What does a pediatrician know about the adult?
Lower lumbar. By the way, lower spine surgery, still not covered in Alabama.
Really?
Yeah, it's not medically necessary according to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Which is also why I think Luigi was having problems too, because people saw Alabama doing it and they try to replicate that. Oh, lower spine surgery is not medically necessary.
Well, talking about these steps and looping back that AI, that's what that is. That's another step that they're putting in to deny you one more time, to go through another appeal process, one more hurdle between you and the care that you need. And that just goes to show that United Healthcare was engaged in the exact same sort of delay of denying care that Luigi Mangione was claiming that they are, in fact. Now, let me get this out of the way. It sucks for Brian Thompson's wife and kids that he's dead. And I feel bad for them. At the same time, I think we can and should acknowledge that Brian Thompson, by virtue of being CEO of United Healthcare, is responsible for more pain and suffering than Luigi Mangione is.
I'm trying to live my life, so when I die, the entire nation doesn't celebrate like the Ewoks watch the Death Star blow up.
And that's what happened.
Like, you're in charge of a massive company that you know are doing evil things.
That makes money on the pain and suffering of the people that pay you money.
And you're not expecting it to break the way it's breaking now?
So you and I have a mutual friend whose wife worked with an insurer in Alabama. Do you remember what he told us about the bodyguards that the CEO of these insurance companies travel with?
They got like 4.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means that they're aware of the animosity and the disdain that comes from their customers towards them. They know what they're doing to these people. They know the effect that it has on them. And the only difference...
But Judge, think of the profits.
Think of the shareholders, General.
No one's thinking of the shareholders here.
The
poor little shareholder.
Those poor hedge fund managers.
Oh. You can only have 5 yachts instead of 6.
That 6th yacht pays for all.
What's the point of yachting if you can't have 6?
If you can't have 6. One for each day of the week, and then you rest on Sunday.
Speaking of 6, I'm going to go off on a wild tangent right now.
Please do.
It just came up. The state of Texas banned 7 dildos, but you can have 6.
Wait a minute. So having 7 dildos is a crime?
Yes. It's a sodomy crime. Or it's not a sodomy crime. It's a obscenity crime.
Jesus. So my next question is there an exception for purveyors of dildos? If you're like an adult sex shop, do you get an exception?
No.
Really?
Yeah, because they were very upset that a grocery store or CVS would also have dildos on display. So it was mainly aimed at the sex shops and all that. But, one, how do you define a dildo?
Is a cucumber a dildo? Does it depend on intent?
I don't know. Like, what's the intent? Like, technically anything's a dildo if you've got the will.
Right.
But
it's all about the intent behind the use of the object, right?
So how do you, 1, technically what is a dildo? 2, how do you count? Is that a half dildo? Like, how do you, what's the proper countage? Like,
is one of those fists, like the practical joke fist that you can get, is that a dildo?
I don't know.
And if it is, what about medical dummies? They have fists. It's a slippery slope, Texas.
I mean, we're going to have experts in
Ken
dildos.
Paxton's coming after everybody.
Oh, yeah. But it's just,
I swear to God, I would put Stormy Daniels on the stand in a second.
Dude, you're like, all right, is this a dildo? And she'll be like, every time.
Man. What a red herring. Love it.
So back to Luigi killing CEOs.
Can we just take a minute to comment on the fact that I love that this man's name is Luigi?
He's going to have a copycat named Mario.
Got to. Well, speaking of copycats, have you seen all? And it's not, but it is people echoing the message, the deny, defend, depose that's been written across, graffitied across America. There was a banner on an overpass in Chicago. The GoFundMe for his legal services blew up, and then CNN's on the 6 o'clock news saying, well, why might people be donating money to defend this murderer? Yeah. And it's like, are you really that disconnected?
Well, this is going to sound really bad and morbid.
Please, love it.
But Brian Thompson suffered for a half a second.
Right.
All right. When he denies somebody's coverage, they're suffering for the rest of their lives. Like, they are in pain every day with debilitating spine issues, gastric issues, brain issues, cancer issues, because his company wants to hold on to that money for 6 months longer.
So the question from a morality standpoint, and I've been having this debate, does Luigi Mangione's assassination of Brian Thompson prevent these abuses from happening? The answer is clearly no. However, has it redirected the fact that we're sitting here now and having this conversation is evidence of the fact that what he did had an impact on this discussion, on this space.
Every American knows what's going on. Every American's been a part of it. Now, the problem is we don't talk to each other and realize how big of a problem that is. And a lot of it has to do with the corporate media not wanting us to talk about how big of a problem this is. Trump's great in the fact that they can always point to some buffoonery he did and talk about him talking about Arnold Palmer's dick size as opposed to real issues like inflation,
healthcare
costs, minimum wage increases, like all that has been shut up. And now all we talk about is Trump's buffoonery
and whose bathroom people can use. Come on.
Oh my God, there's a tranny in the stall. Good luck with that.
Right.
So
call the National Guard.
Yeah. Bring him in here. Take that he, she, it out of here. So,
I mean, it's ridiculous. Like the fact that that's what we're arguing about today.
Like, I've got issues that affect my family, specifically, the high cost of healthcare, the high cost of groceries, and how what used to be middle class jobs are gone. So a lot of, what I work with, clients are no longer there and able to afford my services because that middle class died. And I now, there's only maybe like 2 or 3 ultra rich guys that I have to cow down to on a bended knee just so I can afford to feed my family. Like that's not a meritocracy that I grew up in America. 2, it destroys innovation and creativity that is the backbone of the American economy. The middle class drives everything by making it the most efficient, by creating new ideas and executing them.
And it's also the engine of demand in this country.
Exactly. The biggest demand right now is who can, polish the billionaire's yacht the best.
We're an oligarchy now. We're a corporate oligarchy. The idea, and the Supreme Court made this happen with Citizens United when they ruled, and I'm sure as a lot of you will know, money is speech, and specifically campaign donations are political speech. Oh, and also, by the way, corporations are people, although you can't execute them, right? You can't put them in jail, but they're still people.
They got all the benefits of a person without all the downfall.
Without any of the downside.
You know what happens to people? They die.
You know what corporations don't do?
They live forever.
I mean, we even bail them out, right? Like, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the American auto industry, and regardless of the merits of doing that.
Privatize gains, socialize losses.
That's it. That's exactly what's happening. They can't lose. We can. The middle class can. Anyone listening to this podcast can.
And people have been screaming to their top of the lungs for years about these problems, and our politicians have not been listening.
And the reason they're not listening is because their reelection
is all dependent on money.
Is dependent on corporate money.
Yeah.
I mean the fact that take Elon Musk for example. He spends $250 million minimum on presidential campaigns in swing states to get Donald Trump elected. In Jewish areas of swing states, he runs a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli ads and saying that Kamala Harris is pro-Palestinian. She's anti-Israel. In Palestinian areas, he runs the exact opposite ad. And he has unlimited money to do this with. He's the richest person walking the face of the earth. And he owns Twitter, like this marketplace of ideas.
He owns what's left of Twitter.
What's left of Twitter, right? But he still has a major outsized influence. And so, like, one Elon Musk has a greater impact on what happens in this country than the 5 million residents of Alabama. That's where we are. It's them that matters. It's not us that matters.
And once you've rigged the system in your favor, and you can control it,
and that's what they've done.
There's no way to change it than by, I hate to say this, but drastic measures.
Burning the system down.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the Trump populism is more about burning the system down.
It's anger.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And, you know, it's hard to say that's not justified. Now,
no, when Kamala comes out and is like, oh, everything's great, and everyone's looking around at their, roof burning, and Kamala's like, oh, well, we got inflation under control. I'm like, no, you don't. This is like, everything is not good. Don't tell me, like, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Well, and with inflation, the key causes of inflation are gone. They've been addressed. But what's left?
No.
But what's left is corporate greed.
That will stay forever.
That's what's left. This is price gouging, and people calling, oh, it's inflation. We had to go up. When in reality, it's bullshit. And now the supply chain constraints and things that caused inflation are gone, and it's still here. It's like the same thing that'll happen on these tariffs. When Donald Trump slaps a 25-30% across the board tariffs. And really, that's a sales tax on Americans, right? China's not paying that. Mexico's not paying that. Canada's not paying that. You and I are paying that every time we go to the effing grocery store. So let's say the next president rolls back the tariffs, like they probably will.
Prices aren't going to go back down.
They're not going to go back down.
Yeah.
All that happens is corporations put that money in their pocket. That's all that happens.
Well, back in the day, there were enough companies where if one company broke and started undercutting prices to make more money with volume and take less profit to increase market share, they could drive down the entire sector.
Basically kick off a race to the bottom.
Yes. And specifically, I remember my parents telling me it happened with oil. They'd set up gas stations on corners, and there were enough oil companies out there that everyone was trying to sell cheap gas. So you'd have a race to the bottom on oil prices.
But everything is consolidated now.
Yeah. And the barriers it takes to enter in those types of companies are so high, and the cost of doing it is so high that you don't have innovation from the bottom up. You have dictation from the top down.
Let me ask you a question that I got posed to me the other day. If Steve Jobs is born again right now, could he do what he and Steve Wozniacki did with Apple today in this environment? Or is the environment so crowded and these corporations that are haves are so powerful that they can squash you, outcompete you, steal from you?
He'd have been buried in litigation from IBM.
He would have been.
Yeah. I don't think, no matter how good they are, they're.
But even today, right? If you try to start another company that was as innovative as Apple was through the 2000s, through the 90s, the corporate espionage, the fact that they can throw $1 billion and just crowd you out and not bat an eye at that. We're talking about $1 trillion corporations now. Corporations with more just of themselves, GDP is not the right word, but more revenue than many countries all over the world.
Especially in the healthcare sector, when Blue Cross and Blue Shield dictates the care Alabama receives. Every single Alabamian has to bend to the will of what they want to struck a check for.
Right.
So you got to be on good terms with Blue Cross as a, pharmaceutical company or a cancer treatment company or, physicians. We're sitting there telling Blue Cross they need to do this. And they're like, well, we got to make sure this medication doesn't work first. And these doctors are like, who the hell are you to tell me what my patient needs? Like, I know what type of the medication they need.
I've ran the tests. I've spoken with, I've examined them. I know.
You know, in my expert opinion and years of experience, that medication is not going to work. But they make them do like a 30-day test run on some bullshit medication just so they can put another hurdle for that patient's care. It's sickening and frightening that they've been allowed to do this for so long. And I blame the judicial system
and the legislature
for not checking these companies and knocking them down piece by piece when they misbehave. Like, what used to be the check on corporations was a 12-man jury structure. You stand in front of them, you tell them why that corporation's being a dick, they pop them for a couple million, changes the corporation's habits. Like the McDonald's hot coffee.
Which is so misrepresented.
McDonald's hot coffee case, which led to the tort reform in the 90s. Elderly woman got a cup of coffee from McDonald's. She spilt it on her lap and got third-degree burns.
Horrific burns.
If you see the pictures, you're like, oh, good God. The reason the coffee was so hot is because McDonald's bought the cheapest bean possible, and it had to be heated to a scalding temperature just to squeeze out the coffee extract. And they didn't allow any time to cool or any type of remedial measure whatsoever. But like, when we make a coffee at home with normal coffee beans, even if you do spill it on yourself, it's not going to kill you. But this woman had to have skin grafts on her legs. And the lawyers for McDonald's showed up and told the jury in South Carolina, you can go screw an egg.
Right.
And the jury was like, oh, you're going to tell us what to do? All right.
And they got hammered. Rightfully so. But McDonald's took that hammering and went around the world saying, oh my God, look what these juries did. They're woman spilled coffee on herself and was surprised it was hot. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So that ran around and everyone was like, oh, these juries are out of control. We got to stop them. And it gave the legislature's cover to enact tort reform, which destroyed an American's right to a jury trial. Same with arbitration. It takes away your right to a jury trial, which is a founding principle of this country, because everyone that walks into a courtroom is on equal footing, including these massive corporations.
It's one or two lawyers and a client.
That's it.
In front of a jury.
That's the way it should be. And they've taken these rights away from Americans, and they've taken away the judicial redress, as well as the political and legislative redress.
All the while building up barriers and protections to protect corporations.
So, to quote the great Thomas Jefferson, if you take away the peaceful means, you're left with the violent means.
And that's honestly what got us here.
And Luigi, took that to heart. Luigi, I read some of the manifesto. He is not a dumb man.
He's not dumb, no.
I think he's a little misguided in some of the stuff. He went off the rails here and there, but it wasn't too misplaced overall.
The fact that so much of America cheered what he did shows you that it wasn't misplaced.
Yeah.
I mean, am I condoning murdering a CEO in the street? Not necessarily. But like you said,
well, I mean, like, if you shot Hitler, would you feel bad for Eva Braun?
Obviously not.
Like,
in the fact that from a moral perspective, this is a conversation, right? It's a debate. It's one worth having. Illustrates the problem.
Well, all right. You want to dive into some philosophical stuff?
Love to.
Well, like utilitarianism.
Yeah,
right?
Greatest good for the greatest number.
All right. So from a purely utilitarian perspective, what Luigi did was a good thing. Was the moral thing. Because taking out a CEO helped more people in the long run than it hurt his immediate family.
Even if, Anthem in Connecticut had made the decision to stop covering anesthesia in procedures longer than a certain amount of time.
45 minutes.
And they walked that back immediately after. And I'm sure they would tell you, listen, we already had that in the works. We weren't We were already walking that back. But were they? You know, I know correlation isn't causation. But I'll guarantee you that there are CEOs of insurance companies all over this country that are taking a long, hard look at what their practices are.
The jokes online about like the suspect list.
Yeah.
Somebody ran through the denial of claims in just like his state alone, and it was like, oh, we've got 100,000 suspects right now.
Right. Let's narrow this down.
Yeah, let's narrow this down of who he may have offended over the past 6 months. But yeah, it's the moral basis of murder is, you know, you can murder defending your family. Then it's not really murder, is it? It's
self-defense, defense of others.
Yeah. You can murder for war, you know, if you're defending your country. Assassinations. You know.
You start, because really what we're talking about is almost a Robin Hood-like vigilantism. But
now there's no money to steal. It's all
digital, zeros and ones.
Like back in the 30s, what was it? A Babyface.
Yeah, Babyface Nelson or whatever it was.
Babyface Nelson and some of those other, vigilantes. When they would rob a bank, they would take all the notes on the houses, all the mortgages, and burn them. So everyone that got their house paid for, essentially, when that bank was robbed. And that's why the police had such a hard time finding accomplices.
The locals would hide them.
The locals would hide them because he straight up got them underneath the boot of the bank. So, you know, vigilante justice is never a good thing, but it's an understandable thing.
That was the question I was going to ask. Because like good, bad, it has such moral connotations that we could debate it all night and not get to the bottom. And believe me, recently I've tried. So, since we've talked about the moral connotations, I think all Americans know we're paying too much for healthcare and we're getting a shit product back. But I don't think they know just how much we're getting screwed. So that's kind of what I'd like to move into now.
All right, let's talk about getting screwed.
All right. And
we're not going to bring on Stormy Daniels.
Right, we're not getting back. Stay away from the dildos. So, I sort of broke down into like cost, right? Like what does healthcare cost Americans? So I think most of us would know that the number one cause of bankruptcy in this country is medical bills.
Oh yeah, that's been talked about ad nauseum.
So 56 million people a year struggle with medical debt. And of those 56 million, 11 million ran up high interest credit card debt to pay those bills. And so what does that do? That other than making American Express, Visa, whichever bank a shitload of money, what it does is ultimately grow, because you get like what, a 20% APR, 29% APR if it's high interest credit card debt. So year over year, you're paying 30% interest on that. So you're guaranteeing that Americans have one procedure and never finish paying for it, which is really by design, isn't it?
Yes. Health insurance companies are more than willing to pay for dink and dunk stuff. They'll pay for your, Z-Pack, or they'll pay for like a doctor's visit for, dental something, whatever. But as soon as something big comes up, like having a baby or, dealing with a spine injury in a car wreck, they're going to fight that tooth and nail until no one can fight. I mean, they're going to make you suffer before you get the care that you need. And it's all by design so they can hold on to that cash a little bit longer and make the market work for them. So it's frustrating watching them screw over the patients, the doctors, the hospitals, and everyone in the state of Alabama. And no one's doing anything about it because they just throw up their hands like, well, what are we going to do?
Well, and the answer is you can do something about it. Like we talked about, there's an appeal process. So once denied, only about 10% of patients actually appeal that denial. But once it is appealed, 2/3 are successful at some point during that appeal. So it's about staying the course. Don't get me wrong, it sucks ass, right?
When you appeal it, you also need the doctors on your side to appeal it.
That's true.
And the problem is it costs that doctor more time to deal with that appeals process than it does to go out and help another patient. So that's a fundamental problem right there, is that you need the backing of the medical doctors. And a lot of them are willing to do that. I know a lot of specialists are definitely willing to do that. But your primary cares or your emergency room folks and like all that, they don't have the time.
So, along those lines, because I wasn't even planning to bring this up, but it's something interesting I found. You know about prior authorizations. You have to get approval before you can go get the treatment, right? They're not going to pay you. They're not going to pay for it on the back end. So as far as those go, the American Medical Association surveyed physicians in America. And 94% of those physicians said that prior authorization delayed care. 78% said that it sometimes led to patients abandoning treatment. And to your point you just made, 95% of doctors reported that having to get prior approval raised physician burnout, made them not want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and that's the point.
They want to stop the doctor from pushing forward, and as opposed to them just writing the treatment that the patient needs, it's like pulling teeth with these insurance companies to get what they need to get done. So,
and these are people that went to school because they wanted to treat sick people and help them.
Correct.
And what do they end up doing? Fighting insurance companies.
They're in paper battles with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, because Blue Cross and Blue Shield doesn't think Diana, who can't stand up straight, needs a spine surgery. And he's a spine specialist who's been practicing for 30 years, and he's like, who is this person to tell me?
Who the hell are you to tell me?
Yes, this person has insurance. They've been paying it their whole life. And you're going to come in and be like, nah, I don't think that's necessary.
So
it should be up to the physicians.
It absolutely should be. We should have a caregiver-driven healthcare system.
The way the system should work is that everything the doctor wants should be approved. If the insurance company does not like that, they can fight it after it's done and then recoup from the doctor.
Right.
Have the healthcare company, have the hospitals, have the private physicians, have like an insurance pool of their own, and then they can duke it out on the backside about who gets what. Meanwhile, the care for the patients is done.
Or let a jury sort it out.
That too.
Because which way is the jury going to go?
It's going to go to the patient every time.
Every time.
These poor insurance companies are so, someone think of the shareholders, Judge.
Right. Those poor shareholders. So 80%, and this one comes as a surprise, 80% of Americans are not satisfied with their health insurance, the cost or the care. 80%.
I think I read somewhere where they don't think like a public option is the solution.
Because they've been scared into not thinking it's a solution. How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, well, people come from overseas because our healthcare system's so good? That's bullshit, first off.
Yeah.
And then how many times have you heard, oh, well, you end up you can't get in to see a doctor if it's a public option. There's not enough doctors to go around. Also bullshit. How do we know that? Because these other countries, the vast majority of which have public options or single-payer exclusive public options, have much better healthcare outcomes than we do.
And they also have the insurance on top. Like you can pay for higher quality of care, for like luxury.
For like Botox or a tummy tuck or a boob job or like elective cosmetic procedures.
Yes, there's definitely like what are they? There's a term for it.
Medical tourism?
No, it's like a
boutique
insurance or like designer insurance or something like that.
Speaking of medical tourism, you know about the ladies that went down to Mexico for like a butt lift and got like caught up in the cartel violence.
Good for them.
Yeah.
So are they like kidnapped now?
Some of them made it back. A couple of them got killed. This was like 2 years ago. They got like case of mistaken identity. The cartel picked them up, and they were just down for a BBL. trying to get it on a budget.
I want to like call the embassy, like having been kidnapped.
Help me. Right. So we everybody agrees that we're dissatisfied with the status quo. No one wants to change it because they've been convinced by the powers that be that socialized medicine or a single payer system is worse. Who is it? I mean, pose this question to you. Who is it with access to mass media to convince the masses of that fact?
Elon Musk could convince anybody right now.
Right. It's the people with billions of dollars to spend to run advertisements to...
Well, I mean, think about the television you watch right now.
Yeah.
50% is a drug.
Absolutely. Sky Rizzy. The
jingles in my head.
Man. The like all the prep commercials that I'm seeing constantly. The, take this immunosuppressant for your psoriasis, and you may have a heart attack and
plaque
die.
psoriasis, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Right.
Like, all right, I thought that was in your mouth. You got plaque.
Right.
So apparently it's in your bloodstream. I was like, all right.
Or like on your skin or whatever. But the point is, what you consume is dictated with the people with the money to buy the airtime. And none of these people who are suffering from the American healthcare system, they can't pay their effing medical bills. How the hell are they going to afford like an advert spot on prime time, SEC on ABC to get the message across?
Well,
the reality of the situation.
It used to be peaceful protests could get stuff done. And I'm of the opinion now that they've banned peaceful assembly in certain areas and places, you're up to violent protests now. And now you're up to straight up violence against CEOs and stuff. Like, I think that's where we are as a country, is that these people are still hurting and they're going to continue to hurt. And there's been no meaningful stride politically to ease these people's pain.
Well, we live in a two-tiered society now. These terms, blue-collar worker, white-collar worker, it's bullshit. Because that's used to divide Americans that should have something in common. Lower class, middle class. In the UK, it's just working class and the aristocracy. So here, that's really what we have. The aristocracy in America are these corporate oligarchs that make millions of dollars a year, billions of dollars a year, off the backs of hardworking Americans. And they use these terms like white collar and blue collar to divide those of us that should be in the same boat.
If your primary income is from
your labor,
yes, you're a working class. If your primary income is from sitting on a bunch of shit you own,
you're aristocracy.
You're now on the new American aristocracy.
You're an oligarch. And that's where we are, is oligarchs set policy. Oligarchs control public opinion. And their sole goal is to keep public opinion in a place that they can continue to profit from it. And that's what they've done with healthcare. That's why the single-payer healthcare systems don't poll favorably here. That's by design. They've convinced you to vote against your own interest.
Well, Alabama has successfully voted against its own interests, and now it's the second least competitive insurance state, just behind Alaska.
And Alaska at least makes sense. It's up there by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Hawaii is beating us is shocking.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Welcome to Alabama. It's what we do. We tend to accelerate at some of the worst things in society. Speaking of which,
so we're paying out.
Oh, go ahead.
The nose for this healthcare, right? So on average for Americans, we're paying 12 G's a year for healthcare. That's double what other similarly situated countries are paying. So take so all these people that look at it, they take comparable countries, right? Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Netherlands, France, Belgium, et cetera, et cetera. The average per citizen that those countries are paying, $6,651 a year. Americans on average, $12,555.
Yeah.
So we are paying double what they pay. And then ask me the obvious question.
What do we get for it?
What do we get for it?
Yeah.
I love when I leave something hanging and you hit it the way it's supposed to. So infant mortality rates. I picked just two random metrics, infant mortality and average life expectancy. We are 49th in infant mortality. 49th.
Who's ahead of us?
I need to go back and check that. But I did check the who's ahead of us and who's behind us for average life expectancy.
Mississippi's behind us.
I'm talking about the United States as a
Oh.
whole, not even just Alabama.
Good Lord.
So in the entire world, for infant mortality, the United States is 49th. For average life expectancy, we are 48th. We are just behind Albania in 46th place and Panama in 47th. And we barely edge out Estonia in 49th and Saudi Arabia in 50th. And we are way below any of the comparable countries, right? All those countries that I mentioned that are similar, like GDP per capita GDPs to us and like standards of living, those people live on average of 5 years longer. And the Commonwealth Fund that studies this sort of thing, they put out a wild quote in their like yearly report that looks at these healthcare systems. They said the U.S. continues to be in a class by itself in the underperformance of its healthcare sector. While other 9 countries differ in the details of their systems and in their performance on domains, unlike the U.S., they have all found a way to meet their residents' most basic healthcare needs, including universal coverage.
Yeah.
It's shocking how bad we are. And we're convinced that, and all these countries have a single-payer option.
Well,
And they do it better than us.
Alabama tried to do some stuff back in the day. I just read an article here from 2012 where Joe Whiteley sued Blue Cross for monopoly.
Yeah.
Got crushed.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Because our courts or judges are elected. And who makes donations? There's Smedley.
These fantastic corporate overlords. That's why Alabama Power's never lost a case to the Supreme Court of Alabama.
Never will.
It never will.
And that's the point, right? People that like shriek on corporate media or what have you with the fact that this CEO could have been killed. And by the way, New York's putting in like a CEO protection hotline. Did you see
so
that?
911's not good enough?
Yeah, they got to have a special line, because CEOs are more important than we regular people. And this idea that, oh my God, how could this happen? How could it come to this? You fucking see how it could come to this.
Yeah.
This is how.
I did look up this stat the other day, and I felt bad. But the top 1% of American, top 1% of revenue earners in America own more than 90% of the wealth, which is more skewed now than it was in
90.
Yeah, in the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Really, it was 5 to 10.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God.
Yeah, it's wealth inequality is more skewed than it was when Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake."
Mm-hmm. Good Lord. All right.
And all the while they have convinced us that our true enemy are trans people. 0.5% of the population. Those are the real enemy voters. Not the people that are bilking billions and billions of dollars off the backs of hardworking Americans.
I just thought of a guillotine joke.
Please do. This is a
hey, with the trans and the wealthy, you could take out 2 pricks.
We're getting canceled for that one on both sides. But yeah, I mean, the general point is, you see the fact that the landscape of American healthcare makes what Luigi Mangione did debatably reasonable highlights the issue.
Yeah. If it's gotten to this point, let me ask you this question, Judge. We're already where we are now, and we're getting President Trump coming in to kind of throw more fuel on that fire. Where do you see it going?
So I'm going to answer your question, then I'm going to follow up with what do we do about it, right? Because I think where do I see it going and what do I want to happen / what should happen are 2 different questions. But where do I see it going is increasingly stratifying to late stage capitalism.
Can you explain late stage capitalism to me?
So the idea is that in late stage capitalism, the wealth, essentially where we are now, the wealth becomes so concentrated in the hands of a few robber barons, right? Which is what we had
Turn of the century.
So, which the Sherman Antitrust Act, which we don't use anymore, that we used to break up these companies, Standard Oil.
Well, the Sherman
Bell,
Antitrust Act
Telephone,
was nerfed by some Supreme Court decisions.
That too. So, wealth gets hyper concentrated in the hands of like a handful of individuals or corporations. Things consolidate, so that they own essentially all the means of industry. They own the labor. They own the capital. And that it becomes two classes, like a stratified corporate oligarchs, right? Haves that live in ultra wealthy ivory towers with luxury that we mere mortals cannot fathom. And then you have the rest of us plebes in the dirt that work the factories.
So you think we're already there, or we're going there?
I think we're getting there. And I think that's ultimately where we're headed. Because how do you and I, sitting here in this little studio, talking into these mics that we, in reaching the handful of people that we're reaching, or even if, let's say, we're reaching a quarter of the state of Alabama right now. Elon Musk alone, his resources and ability to influence policy, politicians, and procedure, that one man outstrips what we could all do absent, and I'm not calling for his assassination, FBI, if you're listening. I am not doing that. But it outstrips anything that you and I could do absent some sort of lone wolf actor like Luigi Mangione. I think that's where we're headed, is that actions like this of people who have been radicalized are going to become more common.
I think it's not going to be lone wolves anymore. I think you're going to see groups of people organizing and acting out in violence.
And that's another element of late stage capitalism that I neglected to mention, is the plebes, right? Those of us in the dirt that have realized what's happening and realize that that the idea of upward social mobility to at least that stratosphere is an illusion, act and react violently.
Yeah. Yes.
And let me ask you, Luigi Mangione, by large sections of this country, has been held out to be a hero. Can we agree to that?
Yeah, I'll agree to that. It's definitely a populist assassination.
It resonated with people left, right, and center.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that was the first time I saw conservatives. Well, I did see a wild conspiracy theory saying that it was Nancy Pelosi behind, like, his assassinate or his.
Good on you, Nance. Getting some shit done.
Like he was going to turn him in for insider trading because Brian Thompson had an insider trading case against him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a real piece of shit. He had an insider trading case against him, and some conservative blogospheres have been saying that Nancy Pelosi set up Luigi because Brian was going to turn on him in insider trading. So
it all comes back to Nancy.
I was like, all right. I mean, the bitch can't even walk in Belgium.
Right. Had to get her hip replaced.
Yeah. And you think she's just this Machiavellian.
Come on.
Like,
right.
Now, I'd believe it about Dick Cheney. But I don't think any of these guys are true Machiavellians.
Right.
I do think there is definitely a lot more corporate malfeasance, especially with whistleblowers.
Yeah.
There's some, like the Boeing whistleblowers that just keep disappearing.
Right.
There's a recent one that was blowing the whistle on, I think, the AI.
Yeah. The guy that allegedly killed himself in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I just read about that.
Yeah.
Much like the Russians falling out of windows. It's just too convenient.
Yeah. Like when the whistleblower death rate is around 80%.
That's the most dangerous occupation in America.
Good Lord. Come on.
You want to get dead? blow the whistle.
Blow the whistle, yeah.
But my point is that I was going to make is Luigi has been deified. He's been canonized, right? He's been made into a saint by large portions of America because of what he did. How much is that going to encourage similar actors?
Oh, there's going to be copycats.
Lots of them.
I don't know where, when, but like I think you're going to be looking at more health. I think they're not going to be able to get to CEOs. I think you're going to get like a lot of middle managers assaulted or killed or whatever.
But these corporations, the point is the corporations to be the target of terrorist-like violence.
Maybe some bombs through windows.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Little light firebombing. And again, we are not condoning or calling for that.
I'm just thinking about my head about kind of like what type of actions organized people would take.
Because I think that's the next feature of this whole thing. Because ultimately, I think late stage capitalism.
You're going to see like radical leftists on the left coast over there do it, and I think you're going to see radical rightists and militia groups in the South do the same damn thing.
I agree. And so the second question I was going to answer is, what do we do? And for me, the answer is break this duopoly that Republicans and Democrats have on the reins of power.
I agree with that. There needs to be...
We need to run third-party candidates. We need to vote for third-party candidates. And they don't have to be libertarian or Green Party or whatever, because ultimately I think those are just tools of like larger political institutions.
You need to get good people in power.
That's it.
Just have decent people in power that are willing to, take the punches and then get out.
And just being very honest here.
Being a politician is not a fucking job.
It's not. It's calling.
It's a calling. You get in there, you do your job, and you get out.
And because money equals power and money equals speech, a third party is never going to get a president elected in this country, and that's fine. But what we've got to start doing is we have to start taking away some of these grassroots offices. We got to start taking away U.S. House positions from these main parties. We got to start taking away state governments from these main parties, because you're not going to be able to, as a third-party grassroots candidate, get enough money or enough support to win the presidency. But what you can do is win a House district.
And have enough power
to win the city council.
Yeah. Just not just that, but to like swing an issue left or right.
Yes.
And
to bring it back to the people.
Yeah.
Not swing it left or right. Swing it to the people.
Yes. And if whoever's in charge is not taking care of the folks, break with that
because
party.
they aren't.
Yeah. I mean,
because I have ideas about who I think better does it than the other major party. But Republicans and Democrats have been in power for 8 years at various, consecutive years at various points throughout, since the end of the Second World War. And what's happened every decade? The answer is wealth inequality has increased.
Yep.
So obviously, these people aren't doing too much to address that issue.
Yes. Wealth creation, its effect on civil society is at a breaking point now. And I see more violence before it gets better. I see more violence before people realize how bad it is. Like, I don't think people actually realize how bad it is. And once the violence subsides a little bit, I think we'll have a cleaner slate to deal with.
Well, and I think acts like Luigi's is going to call people's attention to how bad it actually is.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting here discussing how bad healthcare is because of what he did.
I mean, we're sitting here. Well, everyone's too caught up in the rat race, running around like this is Christmas. Like, I'm trying to get all my shit done before the new year.
Who isn't?
I'm trying to get presents. I still got to get presents.
What'd you get me?
I didn't get you a damn thing. You
Ouch.
know it.
Ouch.
I got you that cold beer you have in your hand.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
No, but like everyone has lives to do. They don't have the time to research why it's so fucked up.
Right.
So,
and corporate media, owned by the powers that be and want to keep you in ignorance, are the only people there feeding you information.
See, I don't think corporate media is intentionally malfeasance. I think they're so caught up in making quarterly profits that they have no idea the harm they're doing.
Yeah. No, it's misfeasance.
It's definitely, it's not malfeasance. It's definitely misfeasance. I
It's
think,
just misplaced priority.
like, no one's got a long-term newsroom anymore. Like, no one researches stories. Like,
It's just reaction.
yeah, we're going to put these people on TV that we're going to give them a little script. And
They can say whatever they want.
they're going to talk about, oh my God, this is the worst it's ever been. I can't believe X did Y, you know, and then you're going to have Morning Joe and them, who, by the way, apparently they're eating shit right now.
Yeah.
But like you'll have MSNBC over here talking about the end of times, then you'll have Fox over here talking about the end of times, and then you'll have Newsmax talking about how to bring on the end of times. So like, it's, you know, for me, all that stuff, and what I've noticed is that it's background noise for like hospitals and waiting rooms and gyms or whatever. Like, it's just on, so it's just this constant drone of bullshit
that misses the point all the time.
And you know, I've also noticed some of my favorite internet guys kind of going down that same rabbit hole. Like, once it becomes a job and like you've got to pay the bills, you start cutting corners. You start, you know, not researching things. You start, oh, I can get a bigger check if I just don't talk about that subject. All right. You know, I got babies. You know, I got.
Right.
So it's a slippery slope of compromise.
And it is. And bringing it back to, I think the ultimate point of this is call to action. If you want to run as a third-party candidate for office in Alabama, we want to support you.
Absolutely.
Get in touch with us.
Absolutely.
www.yellowhammerparty.com. Reach out to us. Contact us. We're trying to network. Find like-minded people who understand that your job as an elected official is to help the people that you come from and not protect corporate oligarchs. That's what we're looking for.
We want somebody to make the neighborhood better, not the golf course better.
That's it. That's it. And that's, you know, I mean that's where we are. I'm interested to see where this goes, and I mean that's our 2 cents on Luigi Mangione and the assassination of Brian Thompson.
It's a long, winding road, and we'll address healthcare again because there's no way we could get to everything.
We've already ran long today,
Yeah.
just covering what we covered.
But we'll get back to you on updates on what's happening out there as far as, you know, sentencing goes. Well, he's not even sentenced yet.
He just got indicted today.
He got indicted. There's a movie called Fun with Dick and Jane, and it's a parody of Halliburton or not Enron. And Jim Carrey says the word indicted like 34 times in a row. Anyway, I just love that part. So anyway, we'll keep you up to date on what's happening legally with Luigi, and we'll keep you up to date corporately with Blue Cross, and their we'll check in on their profits, make sure everybody's okay.
Make sure the shareholders are taken care of.
Make sure the shareholders are taken care of. And kind of keep giving you what's happening in Alabama and what we can do to make the state a little bit better. Anything else, Judge?
That's it from me, General.
All right. Have a good night.